everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And we are really excited today because we are talking with another one of our Hallmark writers. And it's our, I think, fourth time having Tracy Andreen on the show. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
I'm happy to be here. And I was actually wondering, it was like before we started the call, I was like, is this my fourth one? Because I think the last one we did, it was you, me, and Kat.
Yeah,
Katrina.
which was legendary.
Yeah. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yes,
we just
Katrina
it
Law,
went
if
off
people
the rails
don't know.
It went off the rails from like the get-go.
No, yes, this is our fourth. Third.
I'm excited.
Third.
Is it?
Third. Because we've had Tracy Gardner on, who is another author. So this is our third time. Last time was you and Katrina Law, who is your sister-in-law. So that was really fun. And today it's very exciting because not only are you here as an incredible screenwriter for Hallmark Films, but you're also your first-time novelist. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. I am excited. I am really thrilled to be able to kind of like shift gears a little. I mean, it's still Christmas. It's all Christmas all the time. Yeah. But at least it's a different kind of not genre, but a different platform.
Well, it is a different genre because this is a young adult book. It's quite
That's
different.
True.
And I just felt so proud of you when I saw it. I was thank you. That's so amazing.
So I got my degree from the University of Oklahoma in writing in novel writing or whatever in writing. And that was kind of the direction that my interest was in. And when I moved to Los Angeles to get into screenwriting, I taught myself everything there is. I'm self-taught in screenwriting, but in terms of writing for fiction, I am that's what I got my degree in. So it was kind of just a dream come true to have Penguin Random House reach out in November of 2019 and say, sent me an email and essentially was like, would you be interested in writing a book? And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Yes.
So this is something you'd always wanted to do, is to write a novel. Yeah.
And the folks at my experience with Penguin Random House, who are the big the mothership, and then Viking Teen is what so This Is Christmas, which is the name of the young adult novel, is published under, but it's all part of the same entity. And so I've been working with Eileen, and I've never pronounced Eileen's last name, and so I don't want to mispronounce it. I've always just been Eileen, and Eileen and Claire and all these people at and they brought in Regina Hayes, who is my editor, who's she's a legend in the editing world. And they told me beforehand, they're like, she came out of retirement to work on my book, and I was just so honored.
Way.
She's worked with like Roald Dahl and the Stinky Cheese Guy and so many other. It's Sarah Deason, who is sort of one of the just queens of the young adult genre, and she's amazing. Sarah is in her books. So I've read a bunch of her books before I kind of like. I read a lot of young adult novels before I dove into writing So This Is Christmas. And so I was just, the whole experience has been from start to now, just a wonderful dream experience, kind of pinched me.
Yeah. So did they approach you and say, we want you to write a YA novel, or did you end up coming up with it? They just say, we want you to write a novel, and then you ended up writing YA?
No, they came to me specifically. Originally, it was two options. One was, do I want to write a children's picture book? And that is more difficult for me, just because that's, I love children's picture books, but this is, it's easier for me to write a young adult novel. So they came at me with a picture book and a young adult novel, and I came up with 6 ideas: 3 ideas for picture books, 3 ideas for young adult novels, or maybe 4 each. I can't remember now that I think about it, but something like that. And for the picture books, they were like, yeah, that didn't work. It was kind of like, wah, wah. But for the young adult novels, that's where Eileen is that's her department, and she really liked some of my ideas, and we came down to two that we were going to do, and she was like, which of the two do you think you want to do? And I was like, I think I could do it. So This Is Christmas, because it's the closest to the Hallmark, paradigm, but also I knew I could play around with it. The other one that I had this idea was going to take a lot more research, and it was much more, it was going to be a lot more involved. And so she was like, awesome, I love it, let's go.
You can save that for book two.
Save that. Well, book two is actually already in the works, and it's called So This Is Love, and it's a continuation of Finley and Arthur's journey.
Cute.
And it's set around Valentine's Day.
Oh, cute. That'll be good.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. So yeah, so did you read like Dash and Lily, Let It Snow, like kind of books like that? They were, yeah.
They sent me a bunch of like Steph Perkins, French Kiss, which is great, by the way, if anyone wants. She's just a really good writer. Maureen Johnson, who did she was also one of the writers of Let It Snow, John Green, Maureen Johnson, and now I'm and I think it's Steph Perkins might be the third one on that. Excuse me. And Maureen Johnson did, and I'm like, I can literally look at the I should run into the other room and go look at it. But she's written a bunch of novels. I love her voice. I love her voice. She is also hilarious on Twitter. So if you really want to follow someone funny on Twitter, she just goes off on these tangents. Like this one that was most recent was about a cat that she just happened to find, and it just was, on the streets of New York. She's great. So I read her, I read John Green, I read just, Dash and Lily and their adventures, et cetera, and kind of took it all in, and then kind of had a moment where I was like, here are all these different voices, different styles. What's mine? And at first I was trying to figure out, like, do I try to shift my style more like John Green, or do I try to shift it more like Maureen Johnson? And so you can kind of, when you read the book, you can kind of see little bits at the beginning, particularly at the beginning, where I'm kind of finding my way in terms of my voice. But I could almost tell you exactly when I found my voice. And from that point on, the book takes off, and I figured out what I want to say and how I want to say it. And that was kind of the figuring out part of it all.
That sounds like a really empowering experience, because it seems like with the Hallmark writing, like it's not as like you have to fit it within the brand. So maybe not as much your voice in particular, like some, of course, but
you're right. You are correct. That was one of the things that was the most fun about this, is I could just for a novel that had 90,000 words, I had fewer notes than I do for my Hallmark scripts. When I cut it back, I was like, not the little notation editing. I mean, talking about like substantive notes. They had a couple. The publishers had a couple, and Regina had a couple, and I was like, you know what? Those are valid points. I'm going to make a little shifts here, but nothing like where Switch for Christmas. I've got 10 days before we're going to start, really shooting this thing. I think we were 10 days before pre-production, and I got the note this particular storyline had to be fundamentally changed, and it affected acts 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I was like, I remember just sitting there, like feeling my chest cave in. It was like and I not knowing how to do this. And Lee Friedlander, who's the director, and it was her idea for Switched. And so she calls me up after our notes call, and she was like, all right, we're gonna figure this out. I'm like, Lee. Lee. She's like, I know. I'm like, Lee.
You're like, can I just cry for one day?
I did. I kind of did for a day, but then we kind of like took a deep breath and we figured it out, but it was, that moment of like, oh my God, that was nothing like that happened with the book. And that's like 90,000 words, where it's so much more is going on. And I was like, yep. Yeah. But the thing is with Hallmark, and this is to their credit, is, you know, they've got an idea of what the brand itself is, you know, and you know that you can't do certain things, right? So you kind of work within that paradigm as best you can. Now, obviously, I think most people who've been watching it recently know that there have been some changes, but fundamentally, that, you know, you're still going to have things that are Hallmark about it, you know, and so you know that there's certainly, like, I'm not going to suddenly have aliens land in the middle of this, you know, this, at least not that I'm aware of. That may change, but I think we're going to avoid aliens. Darn it!
I'm pro alien movie.
Hey, I will say this, you know, not to jump out of the book for a second, but the one that A Kiss Before Christmas, that's coming up this year with James Denton and Terry Hatcher, has a sci-fi vibe to it that was really, and we'll get to it in a second, but I just want to say that was, for me, I just, like, my hands, it was a rewrite, but my hands were like, you know, rubbing together. I couldn't wait to get into it, because it was Hallmark. It's very Hallmark, but it's a little different twist together. So, and then with the book, it's kind of like, you know, I was allowed to use bad words. There's, you know, spoiler alert for people who don't like to have, you know, any profanity. You can't do that in young adult novels. Let me tell you, that was another thing I figured out after reading all those young adult novels. I was like, oh, I was like, I can't. In fact, I will look like the biggest prude on the planet if, you know, I don't do certain things, you know, and just make it more realistic in terms of people.
What did you, like, talk to your nieces, or like try to kind of get a feel for writing a teen voice?
No. I didn't. I actually really like young adult novels in general. I also have a tendency to, I think, probably speak in a less mature fashion in certain things. So I think I kind of, you know, just kind of got it. And Finley, the protagonist for So This Is Christmas, is sort of preternaturally mature and intelligent, even though she's got emotional insecurities that she's going to have to sort of deal with through the course of this book, and just in, you know, her life in general. But that, you know, she's got a certain intelligence about her that opens it up to having her speak in a way that's not necessarily how normal teens speak. And also, if you try to incorporate how normal teens speak, it becomes a little annoying. I don't know, like, just trying to, even if incorporating how normal people speak, you have to sort of whether as a screenplay writer or a novelist, you have to kind of tidy that up a little bit to make it palatable.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the book, and
Sure.
what it's about?
It's basically, you know, I think the synopsis I should have in front of me, right? But it's about Finley Brown, who is this, you know, just newly turned 16, and she's spent the last 6 months. Well, she grew up in a small town in Oklahoma called Christmas, Oklahoma, and the whole town is kind of fallen into a state of disrepair. But before it did so, it was trying to become a tourist attraction town by making everything sort of in the Christmas theme. And they're over some time, because of some things that happened, it's kind of fallen on hard times. So, but Finley herself, you know, she's her parents, her mom and dad, she's an only child, and her grandmother runs an inn in the town. And Finley has always been just too smart for her own good. So she's actually jumped ahead a grade for her age. So should be a sophomore, but she's a junior. And all this is backstory. And what she ends up doing is applying for and going to a boarding school in Connecticut, where she just assumes she's going to continue her trajectory as, you know, smart and doing well and so forth. And it's a disaster. Like, she, you know, when we meet her, she is already in this sort of state of anxiety because she's not doing well. Her grades are mediocre. She has no friends. She can't quite figure out what to do. She feels like not, I was gonna say fish out of water, but she feels just everything's wrong. And she decides this Christmas that she's going to go back to her hometown, and she's probably going to stay there. She's not going to go back because she's failed. And so when she arrives back into her small town of Christmas, Oklahoma, thinking everything is going to be exactly as she left 6 months ago, nothing is like it was when she left 6 months ago. Her best friend is now dating her boyfriend. Neither of them, her ex-boyfriend, excuse me, Brody. Neither her best friend or her ex-boyfriend managed to tell her this in the last 6 months that this was happening. She just sort of stumbled on it on her own. Her parents are separated. They didn't tell her this either, even though they have weekly phone calls. And her nemesis from high school, Aisha, is now working at her grandmother's inn, and they'll be working together over this Christmas break, right? So when we meet Finley, when the Christmas story starts itself, she's just like, this Christmas sucks. And then Arthur arrives, and Arthur Chakrabarti Watercress, which I find a name that makes
it's a good name.
It's just one of those names where I knew it was going to be Chakrabarti, but I could, like, when watercress popped in my head, my mom asked me this. She's like, why watercress? I'm like, I couldn't get it out of my head. I was like, I just thought, God, but it just stayed. And I kept trying to come up with different names, and this was the name that stuck. And after a while, as a writer, when something keeps coming back, you finally just say, okay, that's what it is then,
You just go for it.
Yeah. And you're like, you almost want to be like, well, that's not the name I would have chosen. You're like, but, and so Arthur Chakrabarti Watercress is a student at her boarding school, and he's British, and he has his own demons that he's dealing with. And he arrives with his Aunt Esha, and who is both are English, even though they are, his aunt is of full Indian descent, and Arthur is half Indian and half English. I mean, white, I guess, white right. English, Anglo-Saxon. Right. And then they arrive, and they've been, led to believe that Christmas is the sparkling, perfect Christmas holiday town, and it is anything but. And so Arthur is upset with Finley, essentially, and and he's kind of a bit of a, he's a bit of a uptight little snob when we first meet him. He's a little mix of Mr. Darcy and so just an uptight brat when you kind of meet him. And he basically tells Finley, like, you better make this up to me. And so she's like, fine, whatever, I've nothing else to do except wallow in my own self-pity. So that's the beginning of the story, is all of that is the backstory to Arthur and Finley working together to show his aunt and him the perfect Christmas here in Christmas. And then wacky hijinks ensue.
It's really fun. And I have to say, like, a lot of times the kind of angsty teenager kind of stories are not for me. Like, even if I recognize that they're well done, it's just like one of my least favorite genres. I'm just like,
well, thanks for taking it on.
We recently, Marissa and I recently ranked the Freaky Friday movies, and watching all 4 of those within the course of like 2 days, because there's 4 of them, believe it or not, was a lot. It was a lot of teenage angst. I was like,
wait, we're talking like Jodie Foster?
Jodie. Friday? Yeah, there's 4 of them, believe it or not. There's one there's Jodie Foster. There's one with Shelley Long and Gabby Hoffman from the 90s. That no one knows about. And then there's, which is actually really good. And then there's one there's the Jamie Lee Curtis, Lindsay Lohan. And then there was a musical that they made. Yeah, a musical a couple of years ago. 2018,
no
I
idea.
think.
I
Yeah.
only know about the Jodie Foster and the Jamie Lee Curtis, Lindsay
Yeah.
Lohan one.
So you got to listen to the
And
ranking. Yeah.
I do. I clearly do. I need to like get up to date on that. Good on you for diving into this really unexplored, question. And I
Yeah.
thank you for answering. What did you come up with? Which one was your favorite?
The favorite?
Yeah,
I
I'm sorry.
actually, in my
Is that
ranking,
spoilering?
I know you will check out the actual episode, but I actually,
Sorry.
the Shelley Long one actually was my favorite. I thought she was,
Really?
I thought she was the best teenager inside mom.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
So,
Right. Got it.
so she was best. But it's shocking because that movie was made for like ABC, Wild World Disney, whatever, in 1995, and
Uh-huh.
both her and the teenager smoke in that movie, which
It's
you
so
would never see in a million years now, ever.
it's
I was
it's
like,
so funny.
whoa.
I just watched Poltergeist the other day,
Uh-huh.
right? And 80s movie, horror film, and all
Yeah.
this stuff. But like just watching it and all the stuff that you cannot do today for good reason, by the way. I'm not
95
saying that.
isn't that long ago though. Like I was in
Yeah.
high school and it's not that long ago. And that's why I was so surprised that, like, because so the mom is a smoker. So when she's in the teenager body, all this she's smoking. And I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably, I would not be surprised at all if that's the reason why that version is not on Disney Plus, is because of that.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, because I remember years when I first was diving into the world of, I'm bringing it back to Hallmark, to do
Yeah.
my first Hallmark movie, and I was just trying to figure out like what is this? I
Yeah.
said yes that I could do it, but I didn't have a clue what I was getting into. So I just watched a bunch of them, and one of them I can't remember which one, who the actors or whatever. It was actually a really good a good one, but it was set around the world of like barista. It was like a barista competition, and this woman at the very
the wish list.
right. Is it the wish list? Okay,
There is
right?
one at the end, at least, a barista competition. Yeah.
It's a barista competition, yes, and she made a wish list of everything that she wanted.
Yeah. That's
everything that she'd right. I thought it was adorable. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is actually pretty cute, but he smoked in it.
Yeah.
And I haven't found that since then.
Yeah.
Like in the ensuing years, they aired it a few times and then it was just gone.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder if it's the smoking, is
Yeah.
it like, can you just can't do that anymore? Like, or even in Joseph Williams in Poltergeist breaks out the cigar box full of pot. And I'm like, what is happening right now? Like,
yeah. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, so like, I don't know, just these sort of grumpy teens that are just kind of miserable. It is not my favorite genre. Even when I think it's done well, like Lady Bird, for instance, it's a good movie, but I decide much more with the mom than with the teenager.
No, there was definitely moments where I'm like, oh, come on.
Like, you're a lot.
You're a lot to handle.
Yeah, you're a lot. But anyway, and so it's a tricky genre for me. And so I started reading and I'm like, this is funny. And that's what I think makes a difference is,
that was the most fun.
Yeah.
Was being able to be funny.
Yeah.
Like and to be funny in a weird way. Like the Axe and Drac Moses twins would never make it into a Hallmark movie.
Right.
They just wouldn't. The whole reindeer sleigh ride of just
that was
insanity.
Yeah.
But
the cookie making scene is really fun.
Where she burns them. Like, you can't burn Christmas cookies. Like, I'm not allowed to burn Christmas cookies. Like, I just tried it and it got thrown out. I'm like, darn it.
And like at best you might have like a flower fight of some kind.
Yeah. By the way, cut to Gingerbread Miracle. We've got a flower fight in our between our two leads. Yeah.
I thought you did a really good job of kind of taking on some of those tropes, that are part of the genre. And I actually even have a little quote that I thought was really funny and I want to talk to you about. So This is from the book. It's not spoilery or anything. It says, He says, I'm heavy talked out. I just want to lie on a sofa and watch a fluffy Christmas movie and then watch the snow come down. Mom smiled. That sounds like a lovely evening, honey. Dad nodded. I have a few saved on my DVR in the cottage. She and I both shifted to look at him. Who are you? She said. And I added, you hate those movies. Some are better than others. He chewed another bite. They've been making me feel better lately. Mom regarded him, now curious. Which ones do you have saved? While You Were Sleeping and Christmas in Connecticut. She positively melted. Those are my favorites. Their eyes met. I know.
I it was like,
I really enjoyed that.
The mom and dad dynamic.
Yeah, I like that. And just that, I think that you capture the dynamic of what makes these movies and these stories, if it's a novel, why we like them. It's that comfort that, I've been having a hard time, he says, and that
they make me feel better.
Yeah, they make me feel better. Yeah, they've been making me feel better lately. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think is the most. I've been actually asked this a few times from a few different angles, like what is it about Christmas movies or stories in general that people gravitate towards and have so clearly gravitated towards. I think there's like 150 Christmas movies coming out on various networks and streamers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This year, when I started, I think there was like 25, so why this explosion? And it is, as far as I'm concerned, it's comfort food. There's nothing wrong with that. The world is a scary place right now. And there's a lot of information coming at us from a lot of different sources, and there's not a lot of things that are certain. But one thing that I think, regardless of what end of the political spectrum you're on, everyone can agree on is that Christmas time is a time where everybody, the energy of the country, the world, and obviously this is a more Christian-centric perspective, shifts into one of goodwill towards or Judeo-Christian perspective towards the goodness of getting together. And just, we're at the end of the year. People are nicer to each other as for the most part, and there's a more coming together. A lot of people go home to be with their families, or they're communicating with their families, that there's that feeling to it. And so that's in a world where we're all spread out all over. I mean, pandemic aside, when we were able to be all spread out, it is kind of that nice feeling of togetherness. And I support that completely. Like even before I got involved in doing Christmas stories, whether book or a novel or movies.
And I think there's something comforting of just knowing exactly what you're going to get and sitting down and getting it, like just being like, I don't want to be challenged. I don't want to I'm not sitting down to watch Dune or something like that. Like I'm just watching a happy movie. That's just, it's something comforting about it. It really is.
Yeah. And especially when so much of the TV series are the limited series that you see, or the streamer series, they tend to be more dystopian and kind of a darker turn, which, by the way, is great. It's delightful to get into. But I don't think it's a coincidence that Ted Lasso exploded, because when I got done with this the first season, I just wanted to sit down at the pub with those guys and just chat with every single one of them. I loved every single character, and in that show, and there was a beauty to it, a kindness to it, and that's something else that I think that these movies deliver when done well. Is that kindness and generosity are something that are, I don't think they're in short supply, but they are always appreciated, particularly when the world around can be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And these Christmas movies present kindness. And I'm a big proponent
Mm-hmm.
for that. And
Yeah.
even with this novel for Finley, with her going through all of these challenges and her dealing with her own insecurities and uncertainties, and sometimes, you know, you use a balancing act between her having all of these things going on in her head and trying to, you know, sort them out, because I also had to keep in mind throughout all of this that she's only 16 and she's just newly 16.
Yeah.
So a lot of things that adults would say to her, like, hey kid, you know, that's not at all how it's going to go. Why don't you look at it from this perspective? She's 16 and this is, you know, she's still dealing with a lot of this emotional angst. But at the same time, at her core, she is a good, kind person. And so
Mm-hmm.
there was kind of like I think that actually helped her
Mm-hmm.
be relatable.
Yeah. And I think
In
that's
that
the
way.
hardest thing about being a teenager is, at least in my memory, is that you have so much that you want to do. You feel so
Mm-hmm.
capable, and you are capable, but you're still so limited and you can't
Mm-hmm.
do it yet,
Yeah.
by our society, by family rules, by whatever might happen. And so it's just very like frustrating because you just
Mm-hmm.
want to be independent. At least I certainly did. And I mean, when I was 17, my mom had a baby, and I
Mm-hmm.
and I went away to college with my mom pregnant. And so the last thing that I wanted to do was to be at home, to be thinking about home, to be, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing. People would say like, "Oh, are you homesick at all?" And I'd be like, "Not really."
No. Yeah. Well,
Not really.
you know what? It's funny. Like I remember when I went to college, and just that for my freshman year at college was, even though I was only like 2 hours away from my home,
Mhm.
I was still within the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I grew up in Tulsa and I went to the University of Oklahoma, and that's like a 2.5 hour drive. And I still was thrilled to have like no somebody not watching me 24/7. Not that
Yeah.
my mom
That
was a
independence.
jail, yeah, but just to have that. Wait a second, it was scary. Let me tell you, there was a lot of stuff where I was like, huh,
Mhm.
I can do whatever I want. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do? But at the
Right.
same time, it was a really nice and freeing thing. And I didn't start getting homesick until I got older, and then I
Yeah,
started really
me too.
missing
It
it.
wasn't until I was on my mission that I started to get a little bit homesick, because when I was on my mission, at the time they didn't allow you to have really any calls from
Mm.
home. And now that's changed quite a bit, but that was the only time
Where'd you go?
I went to Indiana.
Oh,
So I
okay.
was in all over the whole state of Indiana, and it was a great experience. But yeah, I just definitely connected with Finley and her sort of desire to be independent, and her
Hmm.
her desire to control things.
Hmm.
But then like realizing she has like no control.
No control.
Like
And
she
this,
wants to control Mia, she wants to control
yeah,
kind of everybody in her life, but she can't. That's
but you
so
can't.
hard.
And this is the other thing. This is the other thing about Finley that I was very clear on at the beginning is she is wrong about almost everything. Yeah, consistently. Like she has this view. Like when we
Mhm.
see her, like she is convinced like this is what, Arthur's a
Yeah.
jerk, and all these particulars about all the people in her life. She thinks she knows exactly who they are. And then when you get to the end of the book, you're like, no, she was literally wrong, but in a good way about every
Mhm.
single one of them, and
Yeah.
in a way that some of it's, that there's some things like that were difficult, like having to leave people, even though in her life, and realizing that these people are not necessarily healthy for me to continue in this
Mhm.
relationship. That's actually something that's a maturing thing to do,
Yeah.
for her, where I won't say who it is because we want people to read it. But like the decision to not go ahead with this particular relationship,
Mhm.
um, was something that I didn't learn until I got into my 20s. And I remember being like, I think that this person is not good in my life, and I don't
Yeah.
need to have them in my life.
Mhm.
And that's a difficult choice to
Yeah.
make. So
That's true.
yeah,
So you also have a storyline with Grandma Joe.
I do.
Yes. And I don't know how much of it we
I
want
yeah.
to
We
give
don't. I
away.
don't want to. I don't want. I. This is a
Okay.
tricky one because I want to talk about it, but at the same time, that's one of those things where Finley gets everything wrong,
Right.
and it's such a turning point for her in her figuring out that she's getting everything wrong.
Mhm.
Like I just, and it affects so many things. So I don't want to. I know I want to talk about it,
Yeah.
but I don't want to talk about it. But let's just for the listeners, if you if when you read it, like there's a lot of stuff going on with Grandma Joe
Mhm.
that we don't really get to until the second half of the story.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you who I had in mind when I wrote the character, who my
Ooh.
visual was.
Yeah.
It was Kate. It was Kate Blanchett,
Oh.
and so that was who's my visual for her in that one.
Did you have a visual for Finley of who you?
So Finley was like trying to figure out. I know I actually have photos of who Arthur is. Like I've literally
Oh,
every
really?
once in a while I'll send a photo to my manager. I'm like, that's there you go. There's Arthur.
Uh-huh.
Finley was difficult for me to envision as a somebody particular because it was it was a first person narrative, so it's hard for me to have like, oh, this she looks like oh,
Mhm.
oh my god, I'm
Like
looking
I
who
don't know the like teenage actresses that well, but
uh-huh
I think somebody, I don't know, like Millie Bobby Brown like comes to mind. I don't know how old she is
yeah,
now.
I
Maybe
love
she's too old.
she's 16. No,
Is
let
she?
me
Oh,
tell you
is
something.
she?
I
Okay.
just this week watched Enola Holmes, just
So
this week.
good.
It's so good. It's
Yeah.
so good. And I spent a good portion of that movie going, how is this girl 16 years old? Like she looks like she's 25 or
Yeah.
24 or something, like she's or in her early 20s. Like I mean, she's beautiful, but she's
Yeah.
also, but yes, that whole spirit that she exudes in Enola Holmes,
Mhm.
I love it. And I, I think Finley's a little more insecure
Mhm.
than Enola is in at least in the first half of the movie.
Yeah.
But but similar. Yeah, there's a
But
similar kind of,
in
you
Stranger
know, I'm gonna
Things, when she's playing 11 in Stranger Things, she's more a little more insecure than in Nola
yeah,
Holmes. So she has
she's
that.
she's she's figuring things out. I mean, I don't
Mhm.
want everyone to feel like Finley is like this character who's like a bundle of, she's pretty take charge about a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
and she's definitely doesn't put up with a lot of things. So she's
Right.
but she's a bit of a little bit of a firecracker,
Mhm.
in her own way. But hey, she's
Yeah.
16. I mean, I know what I was like at 16. I
I
was
mean,
like,
it must have been fun for you to write so many different kinds of relationships because
mhm,
obviously in a Hallmark movie, we just typically have one main relationship. Maybe you might have a side relationship, but in this one, because in a book, you just have more time to kind of flesh out
mhm,
these different relationships. And here you've got LGBTQ relationship,
mhm,
you have a younger relationship, you have an older
mhm.
relationship, you have a bunch of different relationships you're able to write. And that must have been nice.
It was delightful. It was such a, because we one of the things that I think is has been successful in terms of the streamer limited series 10 episode
Hmm.
TV series, whatever, is they often feel like really long movies that are allowed to explore the individual relationships in a way that, a 90-minute movie can't. And I
Right.
think you and I talked about this before we started, and that the limitations of a 90-minute movie, you really can only focus on the main characters for the most part, to
Yeah.
the main love story. And you can have sometimes you can have B stories that take off or whatever, but for the most part, at least within the Hallmark genre, you have to sort of stay within that paradigm. And with the novel, I was able to explore Finley's relationship with her dad a little bit, Finley's relationship with her mom, Finley's relationship with her grandmother,
Hmm.
Finley's relationship with her ex-best friend and ex-boyfriend, and Finley's relationship with Aisha. That's making a new friend out of an enemy, or hoping to make a new friend out of an enemy, and then feeling out that relationship and finding out that there's all sorts of complications there too. And then of course, you have the main relationship with Arthur, and Arthur has his relationships with his aunt and his parents, and his experience of why he ended up at the boarding school and why ultimately he ended up at the inn. So there's all these different motivations and experiences, and that you can flesh out in a much more complete way than you can necessarily during screenplays.
And I had to laugh when I read the whole boarding school description, because I forget what the boarding school was called in this. Do you remember?
Barrington. Yeah.
Barrington.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So my grandfather had not the happiest childhood. It wasn't very, very warm. And the best thing that ever happened to him, if you were to ask him, was that he went to boarding school, which probably says a lot. And I forget what the name of his boarding school was, but he wanted us all to go there. So we were all like, no, we don't want to go to boarding school. But
right. Well, that's
he loved it. He thought it was great.
Sometimes boarding schools are great experiences.
Yeah.
Like it can be this, and sometimes it's like, and Finley chooses to go to this boarding school, and here's another fun fact is in Christmas with the Darlings, originally the school that I was threatening the children to be sent to was the Barrington Academy. And but then it didn't go through clearance, so we had to come up with a different name at the last second. But I was like hoping to have like a little fun little inclusion on that one, but it didn't happen. But yeah, Barrington Academy was just a name that it sounds prestigious and that kind of place. And just as an FYI, the sequel to So This Is Christmas, So This Is Love, will take place at the Barrington Academy, and will take place directly after Finley and Arthur return from Christmas. And it's kind of like following what do you do after Happily Ever After, and this is where it gets complicated. I'll tell you this, it's going to be less cozy Christmas movie because it's not at Christmas and it isn't cozy, but it's going to be more of a teen experience, your typical teen experience at a boarding school, but it's how to deal with. And then the complication is Arthur's 18th birthday is set on Valentine's Day, and his family, the terrible family from England, descends. So,
oh no,
yeah. So that's been fun. So it'll be the Barrington Academy plays a big role in the second book, as does Bronwyn. We get to finally meet Bronwyn and all of her evil machinations.
Well, we'll definitely have you back on when that book comes out, because that sounds really fun.
I gotta finish writing it. I have to finish writing the darn thing.
Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies. Talk real quick about your 3 movies coming out this Christmas season, 3 to 4, I guess, that you're working on.
Yeah, the fourth one is just a polish. I won't
rewrite.
Get credit on it. Yeah,
right. That's unbelievable. I mean, 3 scripts plus a book. My God.
Right? That was a lot
Did your
of
family see you at all?
No, they did not. In fact, I've literally I will say this, the pandemic, came in an opportune time. I'm just kidding. It was like, to joke about a global pandemic. Hi, Larry. So yeah, no, I just was trapped in a room writing about Christmas for a long time. I actually have written a bunch more but these are just the ones that made it onto air. Like worked on a camp movie and a bunch of other stuff, but specifically the three that are coming up this Christmas season. Two of them are rewrites, but one of them was a significant rewrite. I pretty much changed almost everything like this, and that's but I won't say anyway. So and the one with the one that I wrote with that has James Denton and Terry Hatcher is a rewrite, and I'm Mark Amato wrote the first draft, and then I came in and did a sort of a rewrite on that one and did my take on it. And I had that was a lot of fun. Mark really created the world, and then I got to play in the sandbox.
It's gonna be so great. I'm really looking forward to it.
I have rarely had an experience, whether it's an original story or a rewrite, where I know exactly what happens. And I'm like, and I wrote that thing in a very short period of time. Again, whether I've done a ton of rewrites and a ton of and then originals, but where it's just that like fully formed and you know where it's going. And I had a lot of fun. And then when Jamie told me, Denton told me, he was like that they were going after Terry Hatcher to do it. And I remember thinking, like, could it be? Could they really get a Desperate Housewives reunion? This would be. And then she said yes, and apparently it was like from what I understand, just a dream shoot. She was amazing. He was amazing. Everyone had a great time.
I don't know if she has done a Hallmark movie.
She has not. This is her first one.
Yeah, I can't remember. Her being in one, so that one's going to be really fun. And so you have coming up in November
Gingerbread Miracle with Merritt Patterson and John Ecker, and that actually that's produced by the one and only legendary producer Annie Carlucci, who is a dream producer. She's also produced the Picture of Perfect Christmas we worked together on. I did an uncredited rewrite on Walking the Dog and took it through production with her. That's how we met. She and I met. And she produced Love of Course. And so she's been around and doing, that's just the ones that she's done with me. Like she's worked with Nina Weinman Swift, and she did Destination Wedding. That was what I think she did with Nina, and she's done a bunch of stuff with them. So she's a great producer. She produced this, and she told me from set that this was just a really wonderful experience, because when you hear the story, it feels very traditional, which is it's all about a bakery, right? And they're trying to sell the bake. They're not trying to save it, they're trying to sell it. And they're two old high school friends. They were not romantic. They did not, weren't old sweethearts, but they knew each other and they worked together. And what the difference is, this is a Mexican bakery. We're set in Denver. And one of the great things we got to do at the end of the story was we did a posada. And I don't know if you've ever experienced one. I have never experienced one, although I feel like now, having watched, I think, 10,000 videos about it and read so much about it, and and talked to so many people about it. But it's a Mexican-based sort of like story, I guess. It's originated in Mexico. That is a recreation of the night that Mary and Jesus, of the night of Jesus' birth, as they go from door to door seeking shelter.
There's a Disney short, a classic Disney short, where they show that going house to house. I forget which one of it's in the package films. I forget which one, but I'll have to remember and send it to you.
I'd love to see it.
But oh, cool, that'd be really good. Yeah, they also
I had
have it
my
in Elena of Avalor, which was such a well done show. They have that in because it's a fantasy land that has a lot of Latin and traditions in the land in
Mhm,
Elena of Avalor.
mhm.
And so they have an episode like that. And I think that would be really neat to have.
It is honestly,
Yeah.
it really ended up being neat. It was one of those brilliant ideas that Annie had, and I was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And John Ecker is I think his parents are I think is Brazilian. Is his origin, but he's fluent in Spanish, and he was on Queen Sugar and a whole bunch of others, and Narcos and all that sort of thing. So he's a new face to the Hallmark world. But and like he and Merritt, just seeing the two of them together, like they're going to be a really pretty couple.
Oh,
you
that's
know,
cool. It's the
yeah.
short, the Disney one. It's called Las Posadas,
Las
and it's
Posadas.
in
Yes,
the Three Caballeros,
that makes sense.
which is one of the package films. During,
So it's a really beautiful thing, and I was talking to my friend Jorge when I needed a translation of the actual Posada song at the end, and we sat down, and because you can have different translations about it, and so I basically was working with Jorge about making sure that what we had in terms of the English translation, even though they sing it in Spanish at the end, is accurate. So yeah,
That's
it's a
great.
really, I think it's going to be really lovely. And it's kind of a nice mingling of the posada, the having the Mexican bakery, and then I just blanked out on how to say the Mexican bakery. And now my brain is like stuck on that. I can't believe I literally said it 10,000 times and now my brain can't remember. So, and then, but also your very traditional Hallmark type story.
Yeah.
And I think it actually blends in, hopefully. Well, I haven't seen the final cut, but I trust Annie. When Annie says, "Oh, honey, it's lovely," then I think it's going to be lovely.
We gotta get her on the podcast. It sounds like
her voice is amazing. She's the coolest lady in the world. She's
that's awesome. So you have the Gingerbread Miracle. You have the movie with James Denton and Terry Hatcher, and then what's the third one?
The third one. I just want to say the title up until just recently was Christmas Bridesmaid. That I sold, but is now known as A Very Merry Bridesmaid. And it's my friend, I wrote it with my friend Elena Valdez, and she came up with this idea, and I was like, that's a great idea. And so we sold it actually back in 2019. And it's been sitting around because of the pandemic. It got like on pause, and then suddenly it was go. And the basic idea is an adult retelling of 16 Candles, about what would you do if your birthday is Christmas Eve. And I say this as a December birthday person, and I'm December 6th. So I can't even imagine what it's like if you're in that final week of Christmas and everyone wanting to combine things. But on top of that, we have our Leah, our heroine, is also having to deal with, it's her 30th birthday. It's a very important milestone birthday. Her birthday is Christmas Eve, which also happens to be when her brother is getting married.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
And so that's a lot. It's a lot. And it's kind of like, and everyone forgets her birthday. And it's her 30th milestone birthday. And except the best man, whose name is Drew, who comes back and of course was her, childhood crush, her brother's best friend. And he comes back and he's the only one who remembers. So he secretly helps her celebrate her birthday.
That sounds really cute. I love that.
It's really cute.
And I turned 40 this year, and I feel like turning 40 was way easier than turning 30. Just because when I turned 30, I just felt like I had accomplished nothing. And I had accomplished some things, but I don't know. I just feel like 40, it's like I had so much more. And like when you turn 30, for most of us, you're still in those sort of grunt years where you're still just kind of making things happen, and you're just not where that you think you would have been. And
yes,
and I wasn't married, I didn't have family, I just felt like, oh, I am a loser. I hadn't even started. And now I have like the podcast, I have my own home, I have so many different things that I didn't have when I was 30 that now I have when I was 40. And I guess I've let go of some of the like worry about some of those things that I haven't, that you still kind of feel at 30. So I think turning 30 is tough. I really do.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the themes that Elena and I approached in the story, was this character feeling like, I have accomplished nothing. Like she's surrounded. The joke we kind of have in the story is literally, her parents are doctors, her brother's a doctor, he's marrying a doctor, her ex-boyfriend's like everyone's a doctor on this thing, and she's like, I own a shop. Like I own a shop that sells trinkets, and so there's kind of this moment of like, what have I accomplished at 30? Her best friends are married and they have 2 kids. So it's this kind of like thing that she's encountered, because I think 30 is the 30 from my perspective is that milestone birthday where you're no longer a kid. You can fake it a lot in your 20s,
right?
Even if as your friends are all starting to do it, but when you hit 30, you're like, I really am no longer a kid. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like this is serious now, isn't it? And then you hit 40 and you're like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
You'll be okay.
Yeah. I think so. Like some of the pressure's off.
Yeah. Well, it is, but that's the thing. That's in terms of a very merry bridesmaid. That's what our lead character encounters in terms of some of the things that she's able to. I hope, you never know until I will say, like, Elena and I worked on it. We really love this script, and the producers who came on and were lovely. I mean, we really just I just, of course, I'm blanking on their names. I'm blanking on everyone's name.
Do you know who they cast?
I do, and I'm not allowed to tell.
Oh, you're not allowed to tell.
But
okay.
I'm not allowed to. Yeah, they said, because I asked, I was like, can I go? And they're like, no, we're going to do an announcement. I'm like, okay.
All right.
But I will say she's got a lot of followers on social media. I'll say that. Yeah. Okay. So, and the guy is on a CW show.
Oh, so, okay.
And I might add, he is ridiculously handsome.
Ooh, good. That's all good.
Yeah. and I think she's done one Hallmark Christmas movie before. This is his first, as far as I can tell.
Oh, okay, good.
So there we go.
That's good.
See, there we go.
Speculate all you want, listening, please.
And I think it'll air probably in December is my guess.
Okay, good. Well, that's very exciting. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to talk with us, and so excited about your upcoming projects and even the book after that. It's just very cool. You should be very proud.
Well, I am, and I'm very grateful about being given the opportunities, because there's a lot of people out here who are good writers that just don't get the opportunity, and I'm grateful to have been given the opportunity. And thank you. Speaking of opportunities, it's delightful to chat with you again, Rach. It's I'm like, oh yeah, how you doing?
I was looking forward to it. I really, really do.
Always have fun.
Yes. Well, let us know if you're listening, what you think. If you get a chance to read the book, then tell us what you think. And we'll have our affiliate link in the description. So if you want to purchase the book, check it out, and helps us the podcast a little bit. So take a look at that. And Tracy, where can people follow you on social media?
Tracy, TRACY _Andreen at Twitter. And then I think it's similar, or you can just find me on the same. I keep it really easy, just my name at Instagram.
And we'll have all of that in the description, so you can follow Tracy.
Right.
And you can follow me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. A lot of reviews coming. And make sure you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us so much, especially during this holiday season. And then also, if you are listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We sure appreciate that so much. We also have our patron group, which you can be part of the monthly watch alongs, which Tracy has been our guest several times for those. And so fun. And we have in the month of November, we have Anna White coming on, writer Anna White, who wrote Check In. We're going to be watching Check Into Christmas, which is so much fun. So that's going to be a great one. And so you don't want to miss out on being a member of the Patreon. It's really cheap and it's a great way to support us. And we really appreciate that. And then we also have the merch store, which has tons of fun festive designs. And we got some new ones coming this season. So make sure you take a look over there. We really appreciate it. And thanks so much, Tracy. This was great. And like I said, congrats on all that you have accomplished this year. It's really impressive. And I look forward to many more interviews.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.